welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. Together we are uncovering the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Big news out of Canada is that thanks to Donald Trump, I mean, this is the irony of this story, isn't it? Canada was heading towards a very kind of conservative result for their elections until Trump started doing all this Governor Trudeau and 51st state and all that. So Mark Carney, who incidentally is a former governor of the Bank of England, so I have a little bit of history with him, and he's a great guy and very, capable, retains his prime ministership for now. And this is kind of good news, isn't it, for the Canadians?
Yeah, so many things running against him. His French also isn't particularly good. That doesn't help either. So, 25 points down in the polls, the Liberal Party was when Trump took office. 25 points.
Right.
That's an insurmountable number. It's just not possible to win. Of course, Trudeau is the PM at the time, and there was a lot of Trudeau fatigue in Canada. He's been PM for a long time, and they were ready for a change to go in a different direction. Enter Donald Trump, who just... has a way of uniting people. He unites Democrats. Democrats put their differences aside sometimes when, things get really bad with Trump. And Europe has done that as well, especially after the Zelensky meeting. We saw this tremendous unity in Europe as they came together to rally behind Ukraine. And the same thing happened in Canada where, Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah,
my French is worse than Carney's. Was seen as Trump aligned, and I don't think they were like best buddies or pals. I mean, I don't know that there's even a photograph of them together. But he said a lot of nice things about Trump in the past. He was very enthusiastic when Trump won the election. So I think a lot of Canadians really tied him to Trump. And, Trump continuously kept tweeting about the Canadian election, even tweeted the morning of the election. And Pierre posted right back at him saying, please stop posting.
Stay out of our election. The only people who will decide the future of Canada are Canadians at the ballot box. Canada will always be proud, sovereign and independent, will never be the 51st state. Today, Canadians can vote for change so we can strengthen our country, stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to America from a position of strength. And that's from the Conservative leader.
So MAGA's take on this election and on that post is pretty much a consensus that they believe that the reason why he lost is because he didn't embrace Trump enough. That, he should have gone all in on Trump when instead, when the polls started dropping like a stone after all the tariff stuff, and Pierre didn't have a whole lot to say at the time, that is when he decided to distance himself from Trump and try to get away from him. But he didn't fool anybody. I mean, Canadians viewed him as Trump aligned. And there was just no way that he could change that perception in that short of a period of time. But it's funny, to hear like American MAGA Trump supporters go, instead of saying, okay, acknowledging like, okay, Trump kind of blew this for the conservatives in Canada. They say, oh, no. The conservative candidate in Canada just wasn't MAGA enough, as if that's what Canada wants.
I mean, for me, this is kind of heartwarming because I have had a lot of fear about the rise of the far-right party, the Reform Party in the UK. And we know about Elon Musk trying to fund Nigel Farage, and Farage is supposedly friends with Trump, although I don't think he necessarily returns his calls. And, we are seeing in other nations too, around the world, we're seeing this shift to the extreme right and trying to normalize what used to be fringe in terms of political parties. And obviously in, France, Marie Le Pen didn't quite make it, and that was a good sign for Europe. It was a recognition that actually this extreme version of the right, because no one is criticizing conservatism. I've very much of the opinion that there is a place for a conservative party. But when the conservatives fuse with the extreme and far right, the Nazis effectively, as we saw in Germany, that Germany this time, not Germany that time, Germany this time.
Yeah.
We need to get very worried. And so what's very interesting is that I'm hoping that as a result of this Canadian result, the British people recognize that the far right is not a healthy place to be. And as they see the US get destroyed economically and culturally and socially, that they will recognize that the importance of normality. I don't even call it liberalism. I just call it normalcy. That's what the benchmark default should be, not the extremes of people's views and being controlled and told what to do and what you can and can't do. And it's interesting how the far right kind of claim that that's what liberals do, and yet it's completely the opposite. It's you live your life. Just don't tell other people how to live theirs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Trump may go down as a great unifier, right? He's unifying people all over the world. But you're right, in Europe, I mean, Germany obviously rejected their AfD party. Mm-hmm. Other countries did too. UK, I mean, they just did, right? I mean, they didn't do especially well, the Reform Party in the election.
But they did get seats. And
Farage's seat, that's it, right?
Farage has been trying to get a seat for decades.
So he got one, right?
Yeah, I think they got more than one in the end.
Oh, they did?
What the problem is obviously the media. It's no different to the US. The media is skewed, media ownership is skewed, and Rupert Murdoch owns a lot of UK media, obviously, and so you never really know what you're dealing with. But I just believe that people are fundamentally moderate, even if they're conservative, and so by signing up to this kind of this Handmaid's Tale version of reality is just so unhealthy for the planet.
I mean, the only places that you could say they won is Argentina, and Italy. You could argue Meloni is I don't think she's as far right because I mean, at least definitely on Russia, Ukraine, she's 100% on the right side of that.
Yes,
but probably domestically, she's pretty far right. Definitely anti-immigration.
Yes.
And so, but that's only been a couple of places that they won in recent elections. So.
And Australia is struggling with this at the moment too.
Sure.
So it's a worldwide problem, but the reality is that the majority of people are moderate, and I call it normal. I don't want to call it liberal because we don't talk about liberalism in the UK. We just, the Labour Party is just the party of working people and of unions. But, it doesn't feel like liberal. We actually have a Liberal Party separately.
You had a Liberal Party, right? But it's very small now.
Yeah. I mean, it was part of the coalition government when there was, when there was no kind of decision. That was a very exciting time in England. But let's take a look at Mark Carney, because, of course, he's, made a couple of victory speeches, and it's worth seeing how he positions this.
We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over. These are tragedies, but it's also our new reality. We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
But you're going to take us forward.
We have to look out for ourselves, and above all, we have to take care of each other.
Yeah.
Couldn't he come and lead the Democrats here in the US as well? Wouldn't that? There's something rather pleasurably normal and ordinary about Mark Carney, and that's what I crave. Boring. Yeah. I crave boring.
Yeah, I think we've said this before about somebody else. I don't remember who, but yeah, you're right. It's it's sad when you hear that. It's like we've had this intimate relationship with the United States, trading partners, friends, cousins, the whole thing, whatever you want to call it. I won't say big brother, little brother, but some would characterize it that way. And he's saying that that's over, that relationship that has existed for over 100 years between our two countries is over and was ended by Donald Trump. Now, I hope that that's not the case. I hope that this is a 4-year hiatus, and then things will go back to normal with our next president, whoever that is, and we'll resume normal relations with the world after Trump has burned everything down. But I think what he's saying is smart, and I think he's echoing what has been said by the leaders in Europe, which is, hey, we can't rely on them for our security as a reliable trading partner, as a currency. We've got to establish more independence, doing things our own way, taking over some of the security apparatus of NATO, command and control apparatus across the board. And so I think what he's saying is sad but smart.
It's a strategic move to talk in this way. And I think it's actually it's like the intellectual way of dealing with fascism. It's instead of pretending that it isn't there and saying, oh, we're not quite there yet, or we're not quite in a constitutional crisis, or, and actually just rooting yourself in reality and in the present. And by drawing a line like that, it is highlighting how badly Trump has behaved and how significant the consequences are. And it would be great if all the other leaders around the world who have been absolutely mullered by Trump's tariff announcements would actually stand up and take such a strategically strong position.
This is a sidetrack, but it's related, because what you're saying is kind of what we've been trying to say to Democratic leaders as well, which is, and it makes me think of the meeting on Tuesday between Gretchen Whitmer and Trump in Michigan, where Trump is going up there to do his big rally, 100 days, declare victory, even though everything's in shambles. But Whitmer is meeting him at the airport. I know she has a number of issues with Michigan that she needs help from the federal government. And I was talking to a pretty smart, longtime political consultant in Michigan about this last night, because he was saying that, this is a really tough situation for governors like her, because on the one hand, they need to work with the federal government, and he unfortunately is the federal government right now, and they need things from him. And it's sort of like the COVID period again, where if they go to war with him, that might hurt people in their state. But at the same time, what I tried to impress upon him is the danger for everyone who floats into his orbit as a Democrat with presidential aspirations, she's clearly running, is that the rank and file Democratic voter does not simply view Donald Trump as another Republican president. They view him as the personification of evil right now. And so when you go into the orbit, you're going into the orbit in Democratic voters' minds, not of a Republican politician or a Republican president, not as a George Bush, but you're going into the presence of evil. So when you do that, how do you handle that as a Democrat? Do you shake his hand? Do you stand next to him for a photo op? Do you smile? It's almost like you can't win, that you just have to sort of do things behind the scenes, and sort of not in front of the camera. And I think some other governors have tried to do it that way,
But it's about having an opinion and holding your ground. And this is what frustrates me about many of these politicians, is that there's this kind of very wishy-washy, we'll see what happens. And it's like, if you cannot see that this guy is a threat to society and the rest of the world, and he's never, ever going to give ground because it's all about him, and he's so completely and utterly flawed and is as dangerous as the dictators in history that we studied in school, you can't shake his hand. You can't do a photo op. You can't even ask for federal funds.
I agree.
You can't do it. I mean, he's not even giving money to North Carolina and Arkansas, who
That's
are
right.
requesting support, right?
Which
so there's
is
no way he's
hanging
going to
Tom
give money
Tillis
to
out to
California.
dry in his reelection. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, you're right. And so I don't see the benefit. I mean, I had this conversation because this person was trying to get me not to beat up on Gretchen Whitmer over it. You know, and I was just like, well, I like her a lot. Obviously, she had the incident there in the Oval Office that she allowed herself to kind of get used and abused on that deal. So I don't know. I haven't seen the video footage of it yet, but you know, I'm a little concerned.
It is. This is why it's so refreshing to hear from Mark Carney, who is not scared of him, and that is the theme with all of these people: is fear. They are all terrified that he will blackmail them, that he will use leverage, that he will defund them or primary them or criticize them, humiliate them, you know, social media stuff, whatever. And Carney is not frightened. I'm going to play another clip of Carney's acceptance speech where we hear exactly this, somebody who is not afraid to stand up to Donald Trump. I mean, admittedly, it helps that he's over the border, but let's take a look.
When I sit down with President Trump, it will be to discuss the future economic and security relationship between two sovereign nations. And it will be with our full knowledge that we have many, many other options than the United States to build prosperity for all Canadians. We will
strengthen our relationship with reliable partners in Europe, in Asia, and elsewhere in the world. And if the U.S. doesn't want to play a pivotal role in the world economy, we will lead, not the Americans. We are masters in our home. We'll build millions of homes. Will become an energy superpower, will provide good specialized jobs and careers, and will create one single Canadian economy, not 13.
Because this is Canada, and we decide what happens here.
Sounded like Stephen Hawking was doing the translation service there. Wouldn't it be great if we heard that kind of language from US politicians? You know, we heard it a bit from Gavin Newsom, and then he went and flushed all that down the toilet with his podcast and Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. It doesn't actually take much to stand up to Trump, to break him. You know, we saw it out of Mexico with Claudia Sheinbaum. I just think that this fear of this guy is, you know, they fear itself, to coin a phrase. Maybe, you know, Trump needs boundaries.
I heard one of these MAGA Neanderthals sort of responded to one of my social media posts, one of their influencers, and he said, he said, what do we care about Trump's approval ratings? Why does it matter? Like, he's already president. It doesn't matter. And you know, it's sort of like, I don't argue with these people. I would like to, but I don't, because I just don't engage with them. But, you know, what I would say to that person is like, you have no idea, because his approval ratings directly impact the midterm elections. They impact the governor races, the senator races. The president's approval rating, whether you like it or not, dramatically impacts that. And who you are hearing that from right now are Republican political consultants all over Fox News saying this is going to drag our people down, and Republicans in Congress. So how does it impact them? Because if his approval ratings stay this low as they are right now for an extended period of time, Republicans in Congress are going to start running for the exits in these competitive seats. And they're going to break away from him. And that's going to cost them their majority in on a lot of things, on votes, especially on the budget and other things. So it matters a whole lot. And that's why Trump is so panicked right now over these approval ratings, lashing out, calling all of them fake. Well, the thing is, during the campaign, the polls were kind of all over the place, and he could point to one or two and go, that one's wrong, look at this one. But the problem for him right now is every poll is bad across the board, and they're all the same. They're all right in that 39 to 41% range, which if he stays at that is a 25 seat wipeout for Republicans in the House.
Maybe this is a better chart to look at. The approval ratings obviously is, for me as an outsider,
this is the Fox poll. Yeah.
That was the even if it's that bad on the Fox poll, then you're doing something right. But for me as an outsider, Ron, I don't really digest approval ratings as you do, because you've obviously used it throughout your life to understand the kind of the patterns. The way I've read some of these polls, it suggests to me that Trump is still pretty much as popular with Republicans as he was when he got elected. There's like 5% in it. I mean, it doesn't really feel to me, just from my analysis of that data, that there has been much of a move. And for all of us who are, who live in reality, and we see all of these extreme policies as being so obviously a reason for his popularity to dip, there is an awful lot of people who think that what is happening with immigration, deportations, disappearances, loss of federal workers, civil rights, human rights, and everything else that is being curtailed, they see that as a win. And my fear is that despite this polling, which the media, of course, loves to make a whole thing of because it's very useful for the churn of TV news, but in reality, I don't underestimate the support for this insanity.
Well, what I'm saying is Republicans in safe seats are safe. I mean, you're right that the Republican base is going to remain solidly behind him.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of Republicans are very much in favor of the deportations.
Yeah.
Even though the numbers show that they're not happy with how it's being done and sort of the ham-fisted way that it's being carried out. They're not happy with that, but they still say overwhelmingly, Republicans, that they want it to happen. They just want it to happen with a little bit of due process sprinkled in, and not Tom Homan disappearing people. But the point is, look, so many of these Republicans sitting in the Senate and the House won by 1 or 2%. So if he loses 5%, and what do we already know? The MAGA base doesn't show up when Trump's not on the ballot. There's a chunk of MAGA voters who are 1,000% loyal to Trump, who have no loyalty to the Republican Party, who have never shown up. That's the reason why Georgia has 2 Democratic senators, because they both ran on years that Trump was not on the ballot. And a big chunk of MAGA didn't show up in those elections. So if you have that, if you have a sliver of MAGA not show up in the midterms, and then you add in a sliver, 3 or 4% of disaffected establishment Republicans, that's a wipeout. That's a wipeout. Look, there's 24 seats in Congress that were decided by 3 or 4 points. So
can I play devil's advocate again and say that we are still leaving out what has changed between the last election and future elections, and that is voter suppression. That is the level, the amount of laws, voter suppression laws that have taken place in swing states that really did help Trump in November and will likely help Republicans in future elections.
Well,
when you
Democrats
add that into the equation.
I agree. I mean, they put those in place, but look, there's only one answer. Democrats just have to figure out a different way of running the railroad and working around those things, rather than complain about it. They just got to figure out, okay, these are the rules now. Let's figure out how to exist in this new regime.
My idea was to help everyone get a passport and a birth certificate.
Yeah, that's it. Instead of getting everyone to mail in ballot, make sure they have IDs now. And that's going to be more work. But look, we spent $2 billion on the last presidential race and got nothing to show for it. We can spend more money on infrastructure like that. And that is the stuff that the Democrats need to spend kind of money on. grassroots infrastructure, not all these damn TV commercials.
And also remind people that the numbers of people that didn't vote in November, the people that either stayed home or who abstained or said, oh, my vote doesn't even count, so what's the point? You know, some estimates claim that 90 million people who were eligible to vote didn't.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, if you, let's say, hypothetically, you add 90 million to Kamala Harris's 70 million, that's a whole lot more people to unthrone Donald Trump, even with voter suppression in the equation.
That's also where the opinion polls come into play, is enthusiasm, because turnout is always lower if the president has a low approval rating during an election.
Right.
So if Trump's approval ratings are low in November 2026, that's also going to hurt them too. I mean, look, that's why they're panicking. But the point is, they'll panic much before the election, and that's where it makes a difference. Because if they go into these budget negotiations in May, June, it's time to vote on this big, beautiful bill, right? And Trump's approval ratings are totally underwater, and people in their districts are yelling at him. You're going to have people like Mike Lawler, who won by like 1% and who wants to run for governor of New York in a Democratic state, saying, no, you know what? I'm not on board with this. This is going to happen more and more.
That's also going to be the moment that Trump signs $5,000 checks for everybody and sends them in the mail.
Yeah, well,
right?
I wouldn't put anything past him.
Well, I mean, that's what it comes down to. He bribes people. And those stimulus checks that came last time with his signature, they did really good business for him. You know, his approval went up as a result of that.
Yep.
And he knows that that's how powerful these things are. And I think, you know, they've mooted off the back of the Doge savings that they haven't saved any money on. Oh, well, where's that money going to go? Well, Trump's like, oh, well, maybe we'll give it back to the people. And there's a lot of Republicans, especially, who are waiting for that day. And if it doesn't come, they might be disappointed.
Yeah. Well, that's the other problem. You know, all the promises that he made during the campaign.
Yeah.
You know, is there going to be these people are all banking on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. They absolutely believe, they're wanting to know why it hasn't happened already. So if it doesn't happen this year, and none of those things are in the Republican bill, they can't be. They'll blow a hole in the deficit even worse than they're already contemplating. Trump even floated the idea of, okay, well, we won't lower taxes on millionaires and billionaires, so we can do no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, because he wanted to keep that promise.
Right.
And there was a revolt. Like, Republicans in Congress were like, what? Oh, now you're talking crazy, man. You're not going to give the millionaires a tax cut. Oh, that's too much. So even Trump was like, yeah, can we try and do no tax on tips, no tax on overtime? And Republicans are saying, no, we can't do it. So it's one or the other. Either you cut taxes on the rich people or you give no tax on, and, you know, surprisingly, Trump was inclined to go with the no tax on, because he made such a big deal out of it during the campaign.
That's
and
right.
He knows that this is going to look terrible for him, especially in places like Nevada. I mean, that's the whole reason why he won Nevada. The whole reason was no tax on tips. And if it doesn't happen, you know, in places like that, it's going to be bad for Republicans.
So Trump's, of course, blaming the media for the polls and saying, you know, this was his post from last night. We don't have a free and fair press in this country anymore. We have a press that writes bad stories and cheats big on polls. It is compromised and corrupt. Sad. If we apply the psychiatrist's logic to this and talk about his projection and just take a few words out, and we can actually reread it that he's talking about himself. Right?
Look at the time. Look at the time.
5:32 in the morning. First thing he thinks about when he wakes up. But, you know, it cheats. Yep, that's something that he does. Cheats on polls. Yeah, he's done that before. He's compromised. He's corrupt, and he's sad. So just reverse everything that Trump says, and you'll find it's a example of what he's feeling deep inside. His sad inner child. That was a little cool.
Yeah. So for like 24 hours, he put out about a dozen posts about the polls, saying how mad he was. Called once for the Fox the Fox pollster to be fired.
Yeah.
Then in a second post called for the Fox pollster to be arrested and criminally prosecuted. So, and the reason why he's so upset is because this 100-day thing he's been planning for a long time, this rally. It's his first rally since getting elected president.
Right.
And this was supposed to be like a big celebration where, you know, it was going to unveil everything he's accomplished in the first 100 days, and everybody was going to love him and be so happy about how things are going. And instead, he's confronted on his 100th day by this avalanche of polls showing that the American people think this is going terribly. So it's sort of like that's why he's reacting this way, where the last thing he posts at night is about the polls and the first thing he posts in the morning is about the polls.
Well, he has to be in control. That's that, and that unfortunately is why his personality is so unsuited to leadership of the free world, because someone who is a control freak in that way, who then gets the job as president, will become a dictator. And why people didn't see this coming, I don't know. We have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and, you know, shine a little bit more light on this, because other people are chiming in as well. Steve Bannon has something to say, and there's a whole bunch. So we'll do that next here on Uncovered. When you start a podcast, it seems like you have to figure it all out on your own. Scripts and setup and filming schedule, logos. It can be super overwhelming, and every day seems to introduce a new decision that needs an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write podcast descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready to Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/uncovered. Go to shopify.com/uncovered. That's shopify.com/uncovered. If you've ever searched for your name or your address in Google, it's shocking to find how many results have your personal information, and it's not by chance. Data brokers and people's search sites collect your personal information, your name, address, phone number, financial information, income, and hundreds of other records. They sell and share it publicly without your consent. But Incogni is here to put an end to that. Incogni hunts down these unethical sites and gets your information removed from the places that expose your private details. You don't have to email anyone, fill out any forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire process for you. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back onto these databases, requesting repeated removals. This way, it keeps them off forever. So you get way less spam calls, spam emails, and much more peace of mind. And best of all, you can cancel at any time, and they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can get it completely risk-free. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com and use code UNCOVEREDPOD. That's incogni.com/uncoveredpod and use code UNCOVEREDPOD at checkout. And we're back, and links to our sponsors in the description below. So as a result of the tariffs fiasco, and it really is turning into a total fiasco, isn't it, with the news that, you know, nothing on China, maybe a little bit on China, and then he kind of did this big announcement on South Korea, but of course South Korea never had any tariffs in the first place. And then saying, oh, we've done 200 deals. but Xi Jinping's not spoken to him, and no other. And there's only like 195 countries on this planet anyway. So how he did 200 deals, nobody knows. But there's been a whole bunch of things. But one of the funniest ones to kind of come out of this, if you can find any joy in this subject, is Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and this news that they are going to, on some products, display the amount of extra cost that the tariffs are causing. Just explain this to us.
This is just bizarre the way it unfolded. And I will say part of the problem is that this week the White House started doing press briefings instead of at 1 o'clock, which is what they've been doing them at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Now, I think it's funny because Asen is our digital guy at Midas who does all our clips for us of press conferences, and he lives in LA. So he now has to get up at like 4:30 in the morning. So I personally think it's very hilarious that they're doing them that early, right. Just for that reason. But the funny thing is what CBS reported was the reason why they're doing it is because that's when Trump watches Fox. He watches Fox from 8 to 9 because Fox and Friends is his favorite show. And he wants to see them cut away. He wants to make sure that they're cutting away, because he's complained in the past that Fox has not covered his press briefings live, their press briefings. And so he wants to have them during Fox and Friends when he's watching, so he can make sure that they cut away. So
he literally lives for this, doesn't he? Like the idea of him being spoken about on Fox, it's almost a greater achievement than even winning the presidency. So he wakes up, he watches Thomas the Tank at 5:30.
I think what he wants to do is make sure that they're sufficiently glazing him, that they're kissing his ass, right, enthusiastically enough, So, but I thought when this first started happening, I thought, this is going to cause a problem for a press secretary, because I know, because I cover the news every day, that there's a rhythm to the news cycle of when major media companies put out their stories. And from 8 to 9 is when a lot of stories get put out that have been written the day before, the night before.
That's the hot cycle.
That's when they break their stories, right? So press secretary, part of their job is to sort of respond to what's happening in the news. And usually by 1 o'clock, she could have digested everything that is out that day and prepared to respond to it. But now she's sort of having to respond to these stories in real time. Like they're coming out and she's getting asked about it. And she hasn't seen the story.
Well, because the reporters are looking at their phones and they're seeing stories break, whereas she's not got her phone. And so while she's chatting away, they're seeing stuff and they're telling her for the first time.
Right. And so it's creating a problem. And it did with this Amazon thing. Yeah. Because the problem is that while she's doing her press conference, it turns out Trump is on the phone with Bezos. So, but she doesn't really know what's going on, because she's in the middle of doing her press briefing. So she comes out and she gets asked about this punch bowl. It was a punch bowl news story saying they broke the stories that right then that said, hey, Amazon is going to show the tariff fee surcharge on every thing on their website next to everything. So if you click on something and it's made in China or wherever that's being hit with tariffs, they're going to show the price, the tax, and the tariff surcharge. And of course, that freaked everybody out in the White House, right? That they understood that is not something that's going to be helpful to them. So she comes out and she gets asked about it, and she immediately goes into a rage. She had seen that story, obviously, and she had a printout of it. And she said, this is despicable, and this means war. And, she just went off. And so then after the press conference, Amazon puts out a statement like an hour later and says, oh, no, fake news. That's not an accurate story. And I thought, well, punch bowls, I doubt that they would print that they would, because that's a massive story. I'm sure they made sure. So I said, either one or two things has happened in here. Either the story was fake, like they got it wrong, or Bezos somehow backed down between the printing of the story and 10 o'clock. And so that then we learn later, more reporting from Fox, that is what happened, that as soon as the story came out, Trump called Bezos directly and was reading him the Riot Act, and apparently Bezos backed down.
Wow. Didn't they try to kind of blame some, they didn't say, oh, we're now not doing this. They kind of tried to blame a department.
Yeah, they said, oh, it was our discount.
Right.
Whatever their Amazon discount site is.
Amazon resale or something.
Yeah, only they were talking about doing it. Well, no, that's not what the original story said. I think it's pretty obvious what happened here is that Bezos is completely intimidated by Trump. And, he has his new space program also that he's trying to get his foot in the door with the government on some of that. And, he just wasn't willing to take on Trump on this issue. But, the thing is, the bottom line is, though, people aren't stupid. I mean, they're going to see the prices go up. Clearly, that would have highlighted it much more. But you know what? A lot of the vendors who do business on Amazon are putting that on their receipts. But you're not going to see it on the Amazon site, which is unfortunate because that really would have enraged a lot of people.
Let's take a look at Caroline Levitt kind of dealing with this in the press briefing room.
So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon. And Secretary, if you have anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a mess. Like all of this, it's just total, utter chaos.
Well, why is it hostile to tell people the truth?
Yeah.
Like the truth is hostile to them.
Yeah.
Like it's not a lie. You're showing them you would have paid $24 before. Now you're paying $36.
Right.
Because of the tariff fee. Why is that hostile? It's just telling the truth, but the question is, how much longer are these oligarchs going to continue to surrender and get on their knees for Trump?
Yeah.
And again, I've said this before. I really hope I'm not voting for anybody for president in 2028 who doesn't promise to cut all ties between the government and all of Elon Musk's businesses. And I mean all ties across the board.
Yeah.
Neuralink,
SpaceX,
the satellites, the whole shebang, everything, Tesla. And so I think that needs to happen with other companies as well that are surrendering to Trump. And
it is
firms.
Interesting, isn't it, that all of these oligarchs, they also own phallic-shaped rockets that they always seem to have a space program as well. Maybe they know something that we don't, and their plans for Mars we should take a little more seriously.
Much younger wives with lots of plastic surgery is also a common characteristic.
common theme. It's interesting because a lot of the oligarchs that we know of, the ones that are influential, the ones basically that sat at his inauguration, that had that kind of prime position. But there's a whole bunch of others that are hugely influential in this. Peter Thiel, for example, who's a partner with SpaceX in this Golden Dome. And some of us, we, talk about it, make videos, write about it, and try and, educate people. But I think in the kind of mainstream, we don't really know about these puppet masters. And and Bezos, because he has retail, he is at the mercy of Trump in many ways. But a lot of these people, they don't have retail. They have government contracts. Palantir, for example, is a government, has huge government contracts for surveillance and data mining and all this kind of stuff. And so, the stakes are very high for these people. So when you say, how long are the oligarchs going to continue? My concern are the oligarchs behind the scenes, as opposed to the above the line ones who have kind of retail positions like Apple, for example.
Sure. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Yep. But I just think that it's important for Democrats leaders to put these people on notice and say, all right, you can get in bed with him, but we're going to perceive you as MAGA from this point forward.
Correct. And
when we retake the House, when we retake Congress and the presidency, we will view you as part of the opposition. So if that's the road you want to go down, fine. Yeah. But, I don't hear that yet from many Democrats. I think they need to break out of that. Part of the reason is because a lot of these companies give to both parties.
Well, this is what I was going to say about donors. There are some like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example, who proudly claims not to take any of these donations from these types. And there are plenty of Democrats who also make that claim too. And that is very important. And so to position any of these kind of wealthy donors as the baddies who are connected to MAGA and oligarchs is a very simple and clear distinction that the Democrats could run with to segregate themselves from corruption.
Unfortunately, the people who say those things and do those things are people in safe seats. Like her. Yeah. Matt Gaetz is another one. I don't take any PAC money. Well, when you're in a Republican plus 33 seat, you don't need PAC money.
Yeah.
Same thing with AOC. So it will be interesting to see. And I like her, and I like that she does that. If she runs for higher office, like Senate, if she will stick with that, we'll
she's
see.
She's gonna be the president, babykins. Trust me. This is.
It could happen, although I already got in arguments with people about that who.
It's early days, it might not be 28.
Not arguing against her, but people arguing that what she's doing right now with this tour is running for president. And I'm saying I don't think so. I don't believe that that's what she's trying to do right now. But maybe.
Let's go. I agree. I think you have to start somewhere, right? She wasn't old enough last time, so I mean, she's come of age, which is the most important thing.
That's right.
Let's just go back.
Is she 35 now? I don't even know.
35, yeah.
She is.
She's
okay,
just 35, yeah. Let's just go back to the tariffs for a second, because I want to show this video of Trump kind of again doing this bullshit churn of trying to. He slows it down and talks like he's got total control. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, it's utter chaos regarding tariffs. Let's take a look.
We are making some great inroads and great deals. You might want to speak about that, Mr. Secretary.
We had a very successful bilateral meeting with the Republic of South Korea today. We may be moving faster than I thought, and we will be talking technical terms as early as next week as we reach an agreement on understanding as soon as next week. So South Koreans came early. They came with their A game. And we will see if they follow through on that.
And that is a lie. And here's why.
We already have a free trade agreement with Korea. We've had one for nearly 20 years. Almost all trade between the United States and Korea is tariff-free and has been for over a decade. There's nothing more you can do rather than drop the tariffs that you already don't have. Of course they're going to sign an agreement. The agreement's going to say we're not going to charge tariffs on American goods because we don't. Of course Korea's at the front of the queue. This is the easiest one in the world. The only thing this is going to achieve is taping back together the agreement that the president already ripped up. There's one more problem here, by the way. The existing agreement was a good agreement. It was passed by Congress. It binds future administrations. The president's not talking about going back to Congress on that. So all that means is this is an agreement for the duration of the Trump administration. It only papers over the problems that the Trump administration has created. And it's not going to create the sort of stability that would lead to the sort of enduring investments that would make economic sense.
Justin Wolfers there. When you listen to people who have expertise in this area, it all makes so much sense. But the problem with Trump and even, with Scott, what's his name? I mean, these people are so out of their depth.
Yeah, well, I mean, Besson is the one guy who knows what he's saying is bullshit. He knows.
Right, okay.
He's the one.
That's the third option.
He's the one voice. I think he's the one normal person in this administration who's surrounded by fools.
But he does look like a rabbit in the headlights.
He's just trying to whack-a-mole and keep everything. The problem is every time you read all the reporting on this, every time he leaves Trump's orbit, leaves the room, and then Lutnick goes in and Navarro goes in, then they undo everything that he just got. He tries to teach. I think what you're reporting is he tries very hard to teach Trump about economics and the economy.
But that's why Trump defers to him and goes, "Oh, well, Mr. Secretary, maybe you want to say something on this," because Trump ain't got a clue. He has
no clue. And Bessa will. He tries very hard not to lie. I'll say this. I've listened to a lot of his interviews. He tries to deflect and disseminate but I was just reading an editorial yesterday in the Telegraph, which is a UK publication about Ukraine, and it applies to the tariffs too, because what they said, what this said, and it was a brilliant editorial, by the way. I think it was their senior economic editor who wrote it, and what he said is that Trump at this point, when it comes to both Ukraine and tariffs, he just wants a deal so he can declare victory. He doesn't really care what's in the deal at this point.
Yeah.
He just wants a win. And to him, a win is a deal. So when he goes to Bessett and Bessett goes to South Korea right away, and this is what the professor there was saying, was they're going to the easiest country to make a deal with because they already don't have tariffs on the United States. So it's let's go there first. We need one deal because right now we're sitting here day 18 since Peter Navarro announced they were going to make 90 days and 90 deals. That was the day the tariffs were announced. We're here on day 18 and there's no deals. So Trump is hearing this in the media constantly that when are you going to have a deal? So obviously they're running to the easiest point, which is South Korea, the easiest country to make a deal with. The interesting thing is when they do announce these deals, so South Korea will probably be first. Japan will supposedly be second, although the same guy said Japan should have been a layup too because they have very few tariffs on the U.S. But their trade ambassador reportedly stormed out of the room with Lutnick because he said Lutnick was so obnoxious and so condescending and such an ass that he walked out of that they were close to a deal. He walked out and flew back to Japan. He was so furious over the way he was treated by Lutnick. So this is what Besson here is having to deal with, is that every time he thinks he's got something done, one of these knuckleheads comes in and wrecks it.
Just think about just the level of authoritarianism to announce to the world that you are imposing tariffs on all of these countries without any diplomatic relationship first, right?
Nothing.
Just think about that, because
talking to Congress,
right? So
going, hey, are you guys all right with this?
We have to remember that the tariffs come under the banner of the dictatorship. They're not just like economics. They're not just like fiscal policy over in this section. They come under the banner of authoritarianism, because you don't make an announcement on one day in a rose garden with a chart and go, okay, allies, we are now hitting you with all of these. And then remember, when they started, these tariffs were much, much higher. That is an authoritarian government flexing its muscles on the world stage and making enemies of the entire planet, which is why everything was so awkward at the Pope's funeral.
And to your point, it can't be done again without the Republicans in the legislature allowing it to happen. Yeah. And so what happened was, of course, as soon as Trump takes office, was Congress made as part of their continuing resolution allowing Trump to have unilateral tariff authority when it's only being held by Congress, but they gave it to him on a temporary basis. They could take it back at any time.
Yeah.
And so now you have an effort which is being led by Rand Paul of all people and others, a handful of other Republicans, to join with Democrats to repeal that, to take the tariff authority away from Trump. And you have enough votes because every Democrat will vote for it. You've got 4 senators that already have said they will vote for it, and there'll probably be more. And you got enough House people who will cross over and vote. So it literally could pass today, except there's one person who won't allow it to pass, and that's Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson was asked about this on Tuesday morning. And he said, there's enough votes in the Senate and the House to take back Trump's tariff authority. Will you just bring it to the floor for a vote? He said, nope, not going to do it. So there you go. One person keeps an autocratic, keeps Trump from screwing with the whole world.
Yeah. Because Mike Johnson is an insurrectionist. He is in the cult of Trump. He is compromised to the point that he is Trump's man on the inside. Trump don't go to Congress much, but he doesn't need to. He literally has this proxy doing his bidding. We mentioned last time that he's like a little ventriloquist dummy. I mean, the metaphor couldn't be more perfect now.
That's why, despite the fact that Mike Johnson is incompetent as a leader, and is a terrible fundraiser, which is very important for a speaker, he's Trump's guy. Trump wants him because he does everything that Trump wants him to do.
And this is why Trump said he wanted, Hitler-style generals. Just talking about having people who are compliant, 100% loyalty. That's all he cares for. The details of the policy, the amounts of the tariffs, as you say, completely irrelevant. Total loyalty. We have to put all of this stuff into the authoritarian ledger because, that's really what this is. You do not go to war with Canada. You don't go to war with Mexico, trade wars I'm talking about, unless you are an authoritarian dictator. No one in their right mind would do it. And look at the effects of that. And so now he's having to bail out the farmers and bail out the auto industry. And a couple of days ago, he announced that, suddenly reversing tariffs on the auto industry, and the same with Apple after a conversation.
That's being announced in Michigan.
Right. Yeah. So all of these reversals are as a result of the fact that he spoke before engaging his brain or any experts. Should we look at this clip of Brooke Rollins talking about the farmers? Let's take a quick look.
Listen, the farmers, no one supports President Trump more than our farmers and ranchers in our rural communities. And you're right, our soybean farmers, some of our row croppers, some of our pork, etc., they certainly they're more in the crosshairs than a lot of our other agriculture industry. But for the most part, every farmer I've talked to says we understand this and we are with you. And we also know that President Trump will ensure that if there are significant economic damages, that just as in the first term under the China deal phase 1, that we will be, the harm will be mitigated. And so we're already preparing for that. I don't think we're going to need it, but if we do, it will be there. But Dana, to answer your question, the bottom line is this. We are opening up and expanding markets across the world. I'll be in the UK. I'll be in Vietnam. I will be in Japan. I will be in Brazil. I will be in Peru. This is all in just the coming months. That in the last administration, we went from a $0 trade deficit when President Trump left for agriculture to an almost $50 billion trade deficit after the Biden administration on agriculture. There just wasn't much effort around the world to open these markets up. J.D. Vance was just in India. We see them as a massive trading partner moving forward.
So
if we can come to the right resolution,
there will be
the right
deals.
She's lying. You create a problem, then be there to fix it.
So here, I'm going to give you a little quiz question here.
Okay.
So what is the U.S.'s number one export to China in terms of dollar amount? What is the one particular product that the most money we export to China? What do you think it is?
Chips?
Soybeans. It's soybeans,
Okay.
That's our number one export.
French fries.
And so, and pork is another big one.
Okay.
And China just canceled all of it. And we're the second largest producers of soybeans in the world. The largest is Brazil. Guess who they're buying soybeans from right now? Brazil. I mean, so we're losing. And you know what? After these tariffs come off, or if they do, they may decide to stay with Brazil. Well, now that we've established these new relationships, the hell with U.S. farmers. So yeah, agriculture is our number one export industry, right? Besides service industries, also financial services and others. But agriculture is a major export of the United States. And so who gets hurt the most of Americans domestically when we're not talking about consumers, we're talking about exporters, the farmers. So the last time Trump was in office, all the farmers were going out of business because of his tariffs. They were going under. They couldn't sell their stuff. Now we have the additional problem of USAID, which is another place that farmers sold a lot of their stuff to.
Yes.
They're gone. So farmers are about to get annihilated. And of course, what do we know? Farmers are largely Republican. Most farm states are Republican states. So this is going to directly hurt Trump voters. And these other countries know that very well. They know that these are Republican states, and this is hurting Trump's voters. And that's why they're doing it. So once again, Trump in the last administration had to bail them all, had to just give them money, give them government taxpayer funded money and bail them out to keep them afloat because of his tariffs. Now it's 10 times worse than 2017 and 2018. So what she's saying is we are preparing to go to Congress and ask for a massive package of money to bail out farmers. This is while they're talking about creating the space dome thing, missile defense shield, right? The Iron Dome.
Golden
They're
Dome.
raising defense spending by $150 billion in this budget.
Yeah.
Massively cutting taxes. I mean, how are they going to fit in a huge bailout for farmers? That's number one. And then number two, at the same time she's talking about bailing out farmers, the education secretary was on another channel on Fox complaining about Biden bailing out student loans. And it's like complaining that was like welfare or something. It's like, wait a minute, you can't bailing out students, helping them out with their student loans, bad. Bailing out farmers because of Trump put them out of business, good. Like, I thought he didn't believe in socialism.
Again, all of this comes down to a total failure to consult expertise before policies are announced. It's Trump, it's his instinct for business, it's his whims, it's his desire to flex his muscles and to present as a strong man and to make enemies of friends. And you know, this is the crazy thing is that, you know, in Project 2025, they actually advocate for free trade. They're not into tariffs, these people. That's not something that they support. It's Trump
Definitely not.
Brings tariffs back from the 1960s, 70s, 80s. I mean,
if you pulled on a secret ballot, every Republican in Congress, 90% would be against tariffs.
Right.
They won't say it.
Right.
But they are.
It's his thing. He would talk about this in the 80s. It was because of Reagan's tariffs, and he idolized Reagan, I guess. And so he just wants to kind of be that guy. Hence why the Reagan portrait hangs in such a prominent place in the room.
It's the part of his psyche where he's always doesn't want to get ripped off. Is always perceived about somebody getting a better deal than him.
Right.
And that's where it all comes down to, like, the U.S. is getting ripped off. Because we like to buy stuff made in Korea more than they like to buy stuff made in the United States, we're getting ripped off somehow.
But there's no allowance for the size of the economies. The US's economy is bigger than every other. And so, of course, there's going to be a deficit. And then the other thing he leaves out is that most of these things that are made in China, those decisions were made by American businesses. Because it was cheaper to manufacture there. So the contradictions are rife. And interestingly, I'm going to play this clip of Steve Bannon now, who surprisingly, you know, you would have thought he'd be like firmly on the side of Trump, but he has an awful lot to say about the way the economy is being run.
And in this reconciliation, the big, beautiful bill, they're going to throw another $150 billion. That's over $1 trillion. And I love Pete Hegseth, but when Pete Hegseth puts out $1 trillion defense budget, all caps, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling like I got control of the building. The important thing here is that for America to be safe and to get a defense budget that doesn't drive us into bankruptcy, because you are not going to be able to touch social programs until you get cuts in defense. And people up there right now are selling you a bill of goods.
Yeah, that's because everybody knows that a military contract is a job for life. Just kind of explain the point that he's making here.
Yeah, because, the reason to listen to Bannon, the reason why I do, is because he really more accurately reflects the opinions of the MAGA base than even Trump, than Mike Johnson, than Trump, than John Thune, certainly, than anybody. I mean, he really does have his finger on the pulse of, like, I'm talking about like the people who go to Trump rallies. Like, he understands their mindset, and a lot of their mindset is shaped by his thinking. And so what he's saying is he's telling the truth, and Republicans in Congress, especially Mike Johnson, are not telling the truth. And what he's saying is, we want these huge tax cuts, and we want to balance the budget. We want to get debt under control. And there's only you have two ways to do that with the big tax cuts. Is you have to massively cut entitlement spending, which is what Bannon wants to do. That's what he just said. Or you just have huge deficits. You don't do any of that. And what he's saying is, we have the tax cuts. You're increasing defense spending by 150 billion, which he's very much against. Okay, we're going to have a $1.1 trillion defense budget if that passed, which is all-time high by far. But at the same time, you have Republicans in the Senate and the swing district Republicans in the House who do not want to cut Medicaid, and that because the only way for this to work with the numbers wise, without completely blowing a hole in the deficit, is for them to cut at least $800 billion in Medicaid, and that will wipe out 24 Republican House seats. They'll be wiped out in the next election, and they know this. So here's the push-pull is between Republicans who in the swing districts who want to get reelected, who are prepared to just blow a hole in the deficit because they view that as less dangerous to their electoral. A huge deficit is less dangerous to them at the ballot box than cutting entitlement spending by a massive amount. But then you have the hardcore right wing who are in safe seats who want to do the opposite. They don't want to blow a hole in the deficit. They want to cut the budget. And this is why you have this big loggerheads when why the Republicans can't agree. And meanwhile, you have Trump, who really only cares about the tax cuts. He doesn't care about any of the spending stuff. He just wants to win again on this. And so he just wants something to pass so he can declare victory. So the question is here, which side is going to cave? Is it going to be those 25 Republicans in swing districts who don't want to cut Medicare, Medicaid, or are the deficit hawks going to win, and are these big cuts going to happen? We don't know the answer to that right now. Neither does Mike Johnson.
It's so interesting. We're only 100 days in, and so much carnage and chaos. And I kind of feel like they're only just getting started. That's my fear, is that, if you can disrupt the world economy and turn America upside down in just 100 days, which was the plan in Project 2025, get it done quick.
I forgot to add to that.
Go on.
By the way, because there's now we're talking about 60, 70 billion in farm subsidies added to that problem. And they just, Tom Homan just submitted a bill for $69 billion in new funding that he wants for the border and deportations. So add that to the amount. I mean, they haven't even passed what you just said. They haven't even passed the budget yet.
No.
They haven't even passed a budget yet, and they're having all these problems with opinion polls and all that. Wait until they pass a budget with $800 billion in Medicaid cuts. What's that going to do to the polls? So I don't know. I don't know how they work this out between them, because there's two factions that are fighting for their own survival politically, and they are just diametrically opposed. I mean, what they wanted was so-called dynamic scoring. They wanted to get the Congressional Budget Office to agree to like ridiculous economic growth projections, which would show like artificially much more revenue coming in than was anticipated. But the Congressional Budget Office said, no, we're not doing dynamic scoring. We're going to estimate economic growth accurately. So there's no easy path for these guys.
Well, because they've done 2 years.
I don't know how it's going to shake out.
2 years of policies in 3 months. That's the problem.
That's the problem. And this has been Karl Rove just said this on Fox News, the longtime George Bush campaign manager.
Right.
Said the biggest problem is Trump tried to do too much too fast.
Yeah. It's caused an earthquake when it should have been a tremor. Okay, we have to take another quick break, but I want to come back and talk about Pete Hegseth and his former friends and colleagues who are spilling the beans. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. I'm excited to share with you C15 from Fatty 15. It's the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years. It's an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness, and you guessed it, aging and longevity. Fatty 15 co-founder Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson discovered the benefits of C15 while working with the US Navy to continually improve the health and welfare of aging dolphins. Based on over 100 studies, we now know that C15 strengthens our cells and is a key longevity-enhancing nutrient, which helps to slow biological aging at the cellular level. In fact, when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster. And when our cells age, our bodies age too. This eventually led to studies finding the first new nutritional deficiency in 75 years, called cellular fragility syndrome, caused by a lack of the essential fatty acid C15. As many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels and cellular fragility syndrome. Fatty 15 is clinically proven to raise C15 levels, resulting in lower cholesterol levels, higher liver function, improved gut microbiome health, and improved red blood cell health within 3 weeks. Best of all, Fatty 15 comes in a gorgeous reusable glass or bamboo jar, and refills are shipped right to your door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier and longer. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/uncovered and using code UNCOVERED at checkout. True Classic has one mission: to make sure guys look good and feel even better. They've nailed fit, feel, and price across your entire wardrobe, not just tees, but hoodies, jeans, activewear, everything you need to level up your everyday style. But True Classic isn't just about great clothes. Their brand DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do, from creating high-quality essentials to making us laugh with their hilarious ads to delivering Ritz-Carlton-level customer service to giving back to the communities they believe in. Every detail is done with purpose. I've been wearing True Classic for a while now, and from the first t-shirt that I put on, I knew it was different. Snug where you want it, relaxed where you need it, no weird bunching, no awkward tight spots, just a clean, effortless fit that works. Forget overpriced designer nonsense. Skip the cheap throwaways. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. Grab yours at Target or Costco, or head to trueclassic.com/uncovered to get hooked up today. And once again, sponsor information in the description below.
By the way,
yes,
that True Classic stuff, that's some legitimately seriously good clothes.
I know.
I mean, I'm not just saying, I mean, I'm like speaking from the heart right here. This isn't, I get nothing from that. Jordy sent me a bunch of that stuff, like the most comfortable jeans and sweatpants and t-shirt. I mean, I don't know. It's the material, the fit, something. I'm in love with that company, by the way.
Well, it's helpful that you have the perfect body shape. It's as if, off the rack just fits you perfectly.
Yeah.
This is what
well, the bad part about that is that Jordy asked me my size, my pant size and stuff.
Yeah, he did the same with me. And
it's like, man, I don't really want to. That's confidential. Like,
I gave my 6-year-old son's size instead, and claimed it was for him. Let's talk about Pete Hegseth for a minute, because there's concern that he really is going off the rails, losing it. And there's been questions asked of his colleagues, and on this Megyn Kelly interview, this is kind of where it all started, really. In fact, she actually said, "Is Pete Hegseth okay?" This chap is one of the guys who kind of took the fall for was it for the Signal chat or something else that?
From the leaks,
from the leaks. Signal. That's right. Yeah,
leaking to the press about Musk coming for that China briefing.
Right, and so this guy kind of said, I've observed Pete that is one Pete and crushes it in meetings, but it's a tale of two Petes was his kind of description. That is, he's kind of describing somebody who is clearly struggling with whether it's addiction or whether it's, it's often addiction in these situations, isn't it? When you know that someone has a problem. I think even just us watching Pete Hegseth at various events, like that one outside the White House for the egg rolling thing, he was so inappropriate in his energy.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not accusing him of anything, but I am being conscious that addicts will behave in multiple different ways in order just to appear normal.
And, this is Hegseth's friend. This is his long time. He's worked for Hegseth for a long time. And he's saying this on Megyn Kelly's show, who's a conservative, who's a Trump supporter.
Yes.
And so, these aren't like radical left Marxist, right? And what he said in that interview, because I watched it, was he said, look, the problem is, he said, Hegseth is spending 50% of his time. This is what he said, 50% of his time on leaks and who's talking to the press, who's not, internal investigations, doing media, social media, because he's on social media all day long, doing social media and Fox interviews, because that's the only person he interviews with is Fox, because that's where he worked.
Yeah.
So 50% of his time is spent on things that past secretaries of defense spent zero time on. So our current Secretary of Defense spends half his week on stuff any normal Secretary of Defense would spend 0%. And then he says the other 50%, he's running around to bases like working out and doing push-ups and stuff with the troops. He's like, and that's all well and good and stuff. It's good for morale, but he's like, but we have things sitting on his desk, like the defense budget that sit there for weeks, or the Iron Dome thing that sat there for 3 weeks on his desk.
Because he's a soldier.
Approval.
He's a soldier.
Like he's not doing the job of Secretary of Defense.
Yeah. He's not a leader at heart. That's why, what does he call them? What is that name he uses for?
War fighters.
War fighters.
You got to have lethality.
And lethality. Yeah. This is where his heart is. And this is not a criticism. And, you've served in the military. I'm sure you totally get it. That if you are a soldier, you connect with soldiers, and he is not a pen pusher. Unfortunately, that's what you have to do.
I put it out on social media. I said, look, we all knew junior officers like this in the military.
Right.
These gung-ho, rah, guys. But, and so we all know there's plenty of guys like Hegseth in the military. Yeah. But generally, they don't rise above captain or major. That's as far as they go. And then they usually get out and do whatever. Become cops or whatever they're going to do.
Fox News hosts.
But you would never envision one of those guys as the Secretary of Defense. But Trump liked how he looked and sounded on TV. And that's the thing. He looks the part. So, hey, let's get this guy. He looks good. And I see him on Fox and Friends all the time. That's my guy. He served, didn't he? Yeah, he was a National Guardsman, junior officer. We were going to make him Secretary of Defense. The other crazy thing, because Hegseth can't stop screwing up, is, he puts out this tweet on Tuesday morning where he's bragging about repealing this act of that deals with women in military and combat zones and stuff, and he trashes this thing as how terrible it is and woke BS, and we're eliminating it. And it's like, this act was passed in 2017. You know who the sponsors were? In the Senate, the sponsor of this act was Marco Rubio. In the House sponsor for this act was Kristi Noem, who was in the House. And President Trump signed it into law in 2017. This is what he just trashed as being woke nonsense. So, and then of course, when he got called out on it, when people were like, "What are you talking about, dude? This was Donald Trump signed this into law." He said, "Oh, well, it was a good law, but the Biden administration didn't implement it right."
But this is going to keep happening, isn't it? It's going to keep happening when you put people with no experience or understanding of the kind of the civics of government, and we're going to have the same problems if we don't already have them from RFK Jr. at Health and Human Services. Dr. Oz has just been given a job, for goodness sake. I mean, these people, and I don't know disrespect to TV hosts, but a lot of them are empty vessels. They just read the teleprompter. You know, that's what they do. That's their job. That's what Donald Trump did on The Apprentice. He never fired anybody. If it said you're fired on the prompt, then he would have to read it out like Ron Burgundy. And so we need to recognize that the world is a lot less safe with people like Pete Hegseth running the U.S. military. I mean, you heard about the plane falling off the aircraft carrier the other day, right? $60 million jet. The aircraft carrier, what was it, the USS
Hornet? Yeah, or no, Hornet's the name of the jet.
It was the Harry Truman.
The Harry Truman.
USS Harry Truman.
Harry Truman, which is off the coast of Yemen.
Right, because of the Houthi shooting. And they were, at the time, they were towing this plane across the deck, and they lost control of it. And it fell off the side of the carrier, along with the vehicle, into the sea.
What the Houthis issued a statement, which has been backed up by some international press, that they had launched a missile at the Harry Truman, and that the Harry Truman was taking evasive action at the time that this was being towed on deck, and that caused the plane to go over the side. So what does that mean? That's significant, because Donald Trump is saying that, like, we're wiping out the Houthis. Like, we've see, this is another frustrating thing to me, is that people are not paying attention to Yemen. And Trump campaigned on like no new wars, and Democrats are all warmongers, and he's a peacemaker. Meanwhile, war in Ukraine continues to rage. You know, he's threatening all these other countries. And we actually are fighting a war in Yemen, and we have been for 2 months. And almost no media is covering it, and they should, because most of the reporting I read on it is from the UK and, you know, other countries around the world that are reporting on it. And actually Fox is reporting on it. And we've had 6 Reaper drones shot down, which are, I believe, $30 million a piece. We now lost this jet, which is like $67 million, which is at the bottom of the Red Sea. And, you know, so this boondoggle is costing us a lot of money. And the reason why it's significant that if the Houthis shot a missile, is because Trump is saying that they're basically like on their last legs and wiped out, when most of the international press and our own Pentagon is saying that they have seen no slacking, no let up in the amount of attacks by the Houthis on shipping or on Israel. None since we've started. And they also complained, by the way, that in their last bombing, which was supposed to be of a Houthi compound, this is again Houthis claiming this, that the U.S. mistakenly bombed a place where African migrants were being detained, and something like 65 of them were killed. So, but very little media reporting on Donald Trump's war in Yemen, and they should be.
You were and are a Marine. Now, I know a little bit about ships, but I'm no military expert. But an aircraft carrier is over 100,000 gross tons.
Yeah, big.
They're not designed to swerve missiles.
Right.
frigates will swerve a missile, right? Smaller ships that are up front, protecting the aircraft carrier. But the fact that an aircraft carrier is having to take evasive action, right? Turning that thing is not easy. So much so that it knocks a plane off the deck. Come on, something is not right here. You know, in terms of the leadership, in terms of, and I'm talking about at the Pentagon level.
Can we rely on Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump to tell us the truth about what's happening over there?
And is Pete Hegseth giving orders to, you know, firing missiles or moving the kind of active war zone towards the aircraft carrier? The aircraft carrier is the home base. That's where the planes fly back to. It's not supposed to be right in the middle of the war zone.
Well, and of course, the whole signal scandal was all over this stuff.
Yeah.
Was over him discussing missile strikes on an open cell phone.
Right.
So, I mean, some people have speculated that the reason why the Houthis are actually doing so well is because
they're on
they've accessed all of our plans.
Yeah.
You know, who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like, as you say, we're not being told the whole story on this.
That's my frustration. Yeah.
And also we should remind people that this war on Yemen is so excessive. Like the number of orders to kill and destroy is far beyond anything that happened under the Biden administration, because of course the war was active then. He's been going for it. Trump's taking pleasure, clearly.
By the way, they had not, during the ceasefire in Gaza, they hadn't done a single attack. And they said as long as the ceasefire holds, they won't. They only restarted when Israel resumed their offensive in Gaza. So that is really like the origin of all of this.
Yeah. I want to finish on a positive note, because there's this video we have of Pritzker making this speech. And we were saying earlier about how, you know, there's no one really kind of standing up to Trump in as much as Mark Carney has, and just, you know, bringing the story arc full circle as any decent show would do. I want to kind of end with this. I'm just going to show this little clip of him kind of, you suggested he's maybe kind of wanting to run for 2028. I don't really
he's saying
care.
This in New Hampshire.
Right. Okay. Well,
so yes,
but I care less about that. I care more about the present. The present, we need leadership right now.
Agreed.
And this is a very good example of it.
It's time for us to be done with optimism about their motives or their objectives. Time to stop wondering if you can trust the nuclear codes to people who don't know how to organize a group chat. It's time to stop ignoring the hypocrisy and wearing a big gold cross while announcing the defunding of children's cancer research. And time to stop thinking that we can reason or negotiate with a madman. Time to stop apologizing when we were not wrong. Time to stop surrendering when we need to fight. Our small businesses don't deserve to be bankrupted by unsustainable tariffs. Our retirees don't deserve to be left destitute by a Social Security Administration decimated by Elon Musk. Our citizens don't deserve to lose health care coverage because Republicans want to hand a tax cut to billionaires. Our federal workers don't deserve to have, well, a 19-year-old Doge bro called Big Balls destroy their careers. Autistic kids and adults who are loving contributors to our society don't deserve to be stigmatized by a weird Nepo baby who once stashed the dead bear in the backseat of his car. Our military service members don't deserve to be told by a washed-up Fox TV commentator who drank too much and committed sexual assault before being appointed Secretary of Defense that they can't serve their country simply because they're black or gay or a woman. And if it sounds like I'm becoming contemptuous of Donald Trump and the people that he has elevated, it's because I am. You should be too. They're an affront to every value this country was founded upon.
saying it like it is and not pulling any punches. That's really what we need from the Democrats right now.
Yep. Two parts to that. Yep. One is what you just said. We've all been waiting for somebody to get up and speak with some clarity and truth and to go right at these people fearlessly. And that's what he did right there. I mean, that's what we want. I mean, as I'm listening to him, I'm like, he sounds like me, you know, I'm like, it's no wonder why I like it. Yeah. So that's one. And the politics of it. I mean, clearly he's a presidential candidate. He showed up there and at the state party dinner in New Hampshire to give that speech. It was a campaign style speech. And so, he's an interesting prospect. You know, he's a progressive, very progressive. I could see him. It's odd because I could see him taking over the Bernie wing of the party because he's very progressive, but he's a billionaire, which he's one of the richest people in America.
You can be both. This is
that's the thing. A populist billionaire is an interesting formula, isn't it?
But it's normal. This is the thing. It should be normal because I don't consider what you claim to be progressive views as progressive. Because of where I grew up, it's just normal. There is nothing progressive about what Bernie has to say. And so obviously in America, everyone's like, oh, it's like this is extreme.
Very progressive for America.
For America. But for the rest of the world, especially Europe, it is just a normal modern society.
I mean, he could be someone who could cross over to take a lot of those policy ideas and make them more marketable to mainstream American voters. Right. I mean, I think he's a legitimate, serious candidate.
Me too.
That not many people have paid attention to.
Yeah, it's about time people started to take these types of candidates seriously because they actually are of great value and they have an awful lot to offer. And in this kind of leadership vacuum right now, we need to really take anything we can. But no, he is a great option. Okay, well, we have to finish, but I'm thrilled for this opportunity today. It's been super educating for me, and we'll come back next Wednesday and do another one. If you want to download the audio podcast, that drops later tonight. And if you want to rewind and watch it again or share, then please do all of those things. We're very grateful for your likes and your comments and your support, ultimately, from that Midas Mighty. Ron, thanks a lot. See you next week.
Okay, you got it.